Academic freedom is dead.
What will you do without freedom?
Or dying. That privilege, that protection that university professors who have tenure have enjoyed, where they get to speak about research, write, publish in any subject area. And they would be immune from criticism or censure from the administration, from students, because they had this precious, promised privilege called academic freedom.
But they'll never take our freedom!
Well, it's dead or dying. Things like post-tenure review are now becoming common on college and university campuses. And listening to student evaluations, even though the number of students who actually evaluate professors' work in class has dropped precipitously, especially going to online evaluations. Doesn't matter. If you get negative hits from student evaluations, if you get incidental reports or a complaint, well, that goes on your permanent record. And more those tools are being used to second guess or reevaluate your status, your job security, and the response from academic circles is universally the same. As soon as they receive that claim that, well, no, I know we gave you tenure, but you have a couple problems, the response is to cry academic freedom. Academic freedom has become synonymous with free speech in academic circles, especially among tenured or adjunct or temporary people who have a union and have a binding arbitration agreement of due process. And for them, it becomes this confusing mix of, I get to research and write and say things, even nasty things, things people disagree with, things I know people disagree with, and I should be protected, just like I would be protected under the rules of free speech. Not even academic freedom is working today. It's broken, and we got to find out why. So let's take a look. Tap the like button, and we'll get into it. Hi, I'm James Callahan, and this is The Do-Over Show. And over my career, I've served as a tenure track professor. I've served as an adjunct in 8 or 9 different colleges and universities, public and private, grad and undergrad. And there's something that I've learned over that time that a lot of people in the academic world are just starting to realize today, and that is academic freedom is broken. In the recent dust-up over the non-retention, the letting go, just not renewing a contract of an art history professor teaching at Hanlon University in Minnesota, it became obvious that every response from every academic source was that letting someone go just because they taught something that someone's student complained about, even about a religiously sensitive topic, well, that violated academic freedom, even of a tenure. Now, Hanlon has a union for adjuncts, and there is a binding arbitration agreement which guarantees due process. So how come it didn't work? Because there is no due process when boards and administrators are removing the privileges that we assume are associated with academic freedom. They may have never been there. What's obvious today is that they're going away fast. According to the American Federation of Teachers, one of the hallmark groups that touts academic freedom as their very reason to exist, academic freedom involves these 5 elements: a voice or control of the curriculum. That is, professors actually get a say in what courses are offered and taught within the major, within their field, for the general well-being of the school for students and majors. The actual course content. The third thing is their teaching, that is what they say in the class or what they say during office hours in encouraging and interacting with students, not gross stuff, but in the academic sphere to fulfill their academic requirements. And then the use of student evaluations, that is, academic freedom has usually involved professors, tenure track or adjunct even, being able to have a say over what value to assign to student evaluations. And the fifth thing is what they research and what they write about, what they choose to publish, submit to peer-reviewed journals, or what they choose to go into journalistic periodicals. That is, what they offer without peer review, but they just get to popularize about their work. For today, that would also include things like what they post on social media. But the one thing about academic freedom, even with those 5 elements that seem to cover a lot, is that we've misunderstood that academic freedom doesn't cover everything. In fact, it doesn't cover much. So a new hire in higher education usually receives a 3, 4, or 5-year probationary period for a tenure track hire. They're literally on probation. And during that time, they need to demonstrate that they're worthy of the privilege of receiving tenure. Basically, that's an open-ended contract. Now, you still get a contract at the end of each academic year for the next academic year. It tells you how much you're going to make, what your raise is or what your raise isn't. And you still have to go through the process. But that 3 to 5 year probationary period is when you're working towards tenure, when you get peer reviewed student articles and you get the evaluation, you publish, you show that you're a value add to the university or college, and then you're granted tenure. By whom? By the recommendation of the administration to the Board of Trustees. Because I'll remind you, who owns and who runs and who's responsible and who's to blame for just about everything happening in higher education today is the Board of Trustees. That's where the power lies. We don't see it. We don't get access to it. We don't have the privilege of knowing what they're actually talking about. But it's the Board of Trustees that generate concern and are now taking back the little privileges and power given to tenured faculty, including the claim to academic freedom. So when you get tenure, what do you get? Well, you get a party, maybe a congratulations, but that only means that you're going to have an open-ended contract. That is, that you're told that you're going to get another contract next year. And that unless you do something horribly wrong and violate some moral standards or moral turpitude qualifications in your contract or in the tenure agreement, you'll get another contract next year, and you'll go on until the Board of Trustees says, that's enough. We're gonna move you to emeritus. Yes, that is, you're given the opportunity of having sort of a quasi-promise that you're going to get a contract next year, unless you do something that the administration tells you that the board has approved, which you shouldn't do. And that means that instead of everybody being covered and secure, you're not. What that means is that you have due process. Due process for what? Due process that they can't just not renew or not offer a contract next year. If they decide not to offer you a contract, not to retain you, some schools make a provision that they give you a year or two to find or land in another teaching role, or some schools have to give you due process. If they want it immediately, they have to prove what a horrible pervert you are. Now, in some cases, that's pretty easy. But for most people who lose tenure, it's because they either get lazy, they stop trying, they stop publishing, they sit on their laurels, whatever those are, and that they don't work very hard, or they have constant run-ins with students or with administrators. You know you do it, don't you? And here's a recent example of how this is changing in higher education. At West Virginia University, I got to get that right because West Virginia is different than Virginia. Sorry about that. At West Virginia University, the administration floated a proposal of post-tenure review that included areas, for example, if you get an unsatisfactory rating. From whom? Well, from other faculty. When they don't want you around, you won't get somebody from your department reviewing you and saying, yes, we're all part of the same club, I recommend them for continuation. You'll get somebody from another department that doesn't like you or doesn't like your department or wants one teaching line from your department to go to their department. And the administration will send that person to your classroom, review your syllabus, review your teaching, review the presentations that you make and how you grade, and your student evaluations will say, I really don't think they're a fit. It's a vague thing, and that's the purpose of it, to keep it vague. And that will be used if you get two of those sort of demerits at West Virginia University. Well, then the administration, in 1 year, if you get two of those, the administration won't offer you a contract. And that is what they wanted to call due process. Everybody disagreed about it. I've done a video about it. You can check it out here for the details. But it's just one of the most obvious examples of changes in higher education. And by the way, remember what I said, everybody responds the same way? Well, what did West Virginia University faculty respond? This is a violation of academic freedom. We just run home to mama. So let's take a deeper look at what people think is academic freedom. Just Google it and you find this, academic freedom. It's a moral and legal concept expressing the conviction that the freedom of inquiry by faculty members is essential to the mission of the academy, as well as the principles of academia, whatever that is, and that scholars should have freedom to teach or communicate ideas or facts, including those that are inconvenient to external political groups or to authorities, without fear of repression, job loss, or imprisonment. Yikes, you can go to jail for this? While the core academic freedom covers scholars acting in an academic capacity as teachers or researchers expressing strictly scholarly viewpoints. An expansive interpretation extends these occupational safeguards to scholars' speech on matters outside their professional expertise. Wow. So if you tweet something that you don't like Trump or Biden, or you don't like this or that policy, or you don't like this war, or you like this war, and somebody in the school says, we don't really want you to talk like that. Most professors say, academic freedom. And the school says, nope, never part of academic freedom, never intended to be, we never promised it, and so we're not taking it away. You never had it in the first place. What's at the heart of this is that we confuse academic freedom with freedom of speech, one of those constitutional first 5 freedoms of the Bill of Rights. That is, we all agree, and the courts have agreed, that yelling fire with the intent of causing chaos, havoc, injury in a crowded movie theater is a limit on freedom of speech. But let's say you're in a crowded movie theater and there actually is a fire. For you not to cry fire in that circumstance is immoral. In fact, Good Samaritan laws would say you knew there was a fire and you didn't cry fire in a crowded movie theater. That is, freedom of speech is tempered by the intent. And this is where academic freedom sort of disconnects from this idea that there should be a freedom of speech for my scholarly activity and research. And that is, you know you do it. And schools know you do it. That is, they're writing into post-tenure review and retention evaluation guidelines things like you have to agree with the culture of the school, with the alignment of the school. You have to be a fit for the school. I was not renewed at one of my adjunct positions because they said, no, we don't think you fit, because I was openly critical of the religious organization that ran the whole school. Look, I'm not going to change what the Vatican or Catholic schools think, but being able to talk about scandals within the church, not just old ancient ones, historic ones, but things going on today and what people are doing about them, yeah, that was just too much. Now, even though it was a religious studies course, and it was how people within American culture see the church today, and that would typically be protected by academic freedom, I was told, no, you can't criticize the school and the reason why the school exists. And that becomes one of the new standards that's used to say, it's not academic freedom, you're just not a fit. And on the other hand, most of us, we do like to take a run at the dean or the administration or the board, and we like to complain about it. So schools are actually building in provisions that you cannot speak critically, you can't criticize, you can't insult, you can't defame, you can't snarkily comment about what's going on at the school. You have to be a supporter of the school. And if you don't, then the school can use that as a reason for non-retention or termination. That's a chilling effect. That is coming to your school really soon if it's not already there. And it's just sloppy when academics like us run and hide behind academic freedom with our intellectual powers when we confuse things that we really shouldn't confuse. There are no protections for being a jerk. There are no protections for, with evil intent, yelling fire in a crowded theater, just like there are no protections in a classroom for saying stupid things just because you want to vent or you want to piss off somebody or trigger a student because you don't like them or their religion or the politics or the hat that they're wearing. That's just us being jerks. And those things are not protected. And schools typically will let you have leeway in that regard. But then if you do it over and over, they're just going to say, you're not worth the trouble. But it's the obvious erosion of academic freedom that threatens one of the greatest strengths of the academy for most of us. And that is that this is a place where the free exchange of ideas can happen, even ideas that we disagree with. In fact, ideas that I disagree with, I routinely present within my classes in order to show the difference between how we treat data and how we develop knowledge. We have stimuli, we have things that come to us, and then what we are researching and figuring out, how I see this, how someone else would see this, how you would see this. That's where knowledge comes in. The wisdom part is where we get into trouble, and that is what we do with that information. When we choose one of the areas of knowledge that people see this and we ridicule it or criticize it, whether it's from a student's perspective, our peers in the academy, or whether it's a political perspective or the school's take on something. Yep, that's where we end up getting on that difficult line. Do we cross the line? Are we just upsetting the wrong people? Are we not making the right kind of friends? And that's where the vague thing about we don't know if you're a fit is the universal response for higher ed academics and board of trustees to explain why, oops, you didn't get a contract. I have a friend who likes to say that in the academy, diversity is its strength. But the problem with diversity is that it's also used as a way of protecting all things as though all ideas were equal. And anybody who has studied academically in grad school level knows that you will study 18 different ways of viewing things and you'll think 16 or 17 are just plain stupid. And sometimes you just say it. Well, diversity has become an equality of all opinions, and it's just become ours to sort of reproduce all of those opinions. That's why my friend says that the opposite of diversity, the way it's become this sort of everything's even, is actually the word that we like, and that is university, where we're able to see things from a different perspective with a hierarchy, with better ideas and worse ideas lining up, and how they interact with each other, and why bad ideas tend to prevail even over good ideas. So what are your ideas about academic freedom? Have you had a run-in and claimed academic freedom protects you? What are the areas that you see academic freedom being threatened in your life, in your work, at your school, your university? And if you've got something, if you've got some experience, let's keep the conversation going. Drop them in the comments, because we need to hear and we need to make this visible so that we aren't confused about academic freedom and we don't think we can just say anything, but we realize what we can say, what we should be saying in order to pursue what is the glorious reason why we all love higher education so much, and that is the free exchange of ideas, even uncomfortable ideas. And thanks for being part of the Do-Over Show. Please, while you're down there leaving your comments, could you tap the like button? Because it really helps. And while you're down there, how about you subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. I'm so glad you found me, and I found you. Thanks.